first at 9. Headlines.
A very good evening and welcome to Primetime News. I'm Florine Rajendran with your headlines. Supreme Court reaffirms the death sentence on Angulana murder convicts. UN chief calls on the Sri Lankan government to cooperate with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Central Bank of Sri Lanka imposes interest rate caps for savings and fixed deposits at licensed finance companies. Ceylon newspapers issue letter of demand to LMRB demanding 500 million rupees for loss and damages incurred. Let's now cross over to the main news desk for these stories and much more.
Thank you so much, Florine. Good evening. I'm Madhushka Balasuriya.
I'm Minoshi Ratnasekara. Let's take a look at your top stories for tonight. The UN Secretary General has called on the Sri Lankan government to constructively engage and cooperate with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to implement the resolution on Sri Lanka adopted in Geneva last week. Ban Ki-moon's deputy spokesperson Farhan Haq made this statement addressing reporters at the UN in New York yesterday.
The Secretary General has consistently underlined the importance of an accountability process for addressing violations of international humanitarian and human rights law in Sri Lanka. He welcomes the determination by the High Commissioner for Human Rights to advance accountability and promote lasting peace and reconciliation in the country. The Secretary General calls on the government of Sri Lanka to constructively engage and cooperate with the Office of the High Commissioner on the implementation of the resolution adopted last week by the Human Rights Council. He recalls the commitments made to him on accountability by the President of Sri Lanka in their joint statement of 2009. The United Nations will remain engaged with Sri Lanka to support Sri Lanka's efforts to make progress in accountability, reconciliation, and a lasting political solution.
Now moving into another headline-making story. Ceylon Newspapers Private Limited, in a letter of demand through Attorney-at-Law Gigi Arul Pragasam, has demanded a sum of 500 million rupees from Lanka Market Research Bureau Private Limited for loss and damages incurred. LMRB Private Limited voluntarily stopped issuing of television ratings on the 31st of December 2012.
Ceylon Newspapers Private Limited, the publisher of 2 daily newspapers and 2 Sunday newspapers, claimed that Lanka Market Research Bureau Private Limited, or LMRB, which publishes readership figures of newspapers and circulates this publication to advertising agencies, had been negligent in the release of readership figures in the reports published in 2012 and 2013 for the 4 newspapers published by Ceylon Newspapers Private Limited. Through the letter of demand, Ceylon Newspapers Private Limited also claims that in the reports of 2012 and 2013, LMRB had recorded readership figures for unpublished publications, recorded daily readership figures for a Sunday newspaper, recorded readership figures for a daily newspaper that contrast significantly with the research of AC Nielsen, a leading and reputed research agency in the world, and had considered an incorrect research profile age. Ceylon Newspapers Private Limited further claims that Lanka Market Research Bureau Private Limited had at all times acted with mala fides against Ceylon Newspapers Private Limited. Our efforts to contact officials from LMRB on the letter of demand sent by Ceylon Newspapers Private Limited proved futile. Based on independent reports by other leading reputed research agencies, other institutes will be following suit in the near future with the option of legal redress.
Now, at a media briefing convened this morning, Azad Sali, the leader of the National Unity Front, said that the people had shown the government a red light at the concluded provincial council polls.
ආණ්ඩුවට රතු එලියක් ජනතාව විසින් පෙන්නලා තිනවා. මේ රතු එලිය තමයි ආණ්ඩුව පුණුපුණාම කිව්වේ ජෙනීවා වල තියෙන.
The people have shown the government a red light. The government kept harping on the vote in Geneva. They kept harping on the electric chair. But today, the people of this country have voted. Does this vote show that the people of this country are aligned with the UN resolution? Their latest argument is that 23 voted for the resolution and against the government. Then they say that of the other 24, 12 voted to protect the government and 12 abstained. So the government says that together 24 nations were opposed to the resolution and thereby the government has won. I wish to ask GL Piris where he learned this form of mathematics, and I too would like to go to that school. The people have voted against bribery, corruption and terror. The opposition too understands this now. It is something that we have constantly reiterated in this country. They have understood that if all in the opposition unite, the government is finished. This has been proven at this election.
දැන් විපක්ෂයට තේරෙනවා රටේ අපි හැමදාම කියපු දේ තමයි සියලුම විපක්ෂ එක්ක වුණා නම් ආණ්ඩුව ඉවරයි කියන එක. දැන් ඒක හරි. මේ මැතිවරණයෙන් ඔප්පු කරලා ඉවරයි.
Elections Commissioner Mahinda Deshapriya says that any person whose name is on the electoral list can contest an election. He made this statement at a media briefing convened today when questioned by a journalist on the matter of Democratic Party leader Sarath Fonseca exercising his franchise at the recently concluded Provincial Council polls.
යම් කෙනෙක් ප්‍රජායිතිය අවශ්‍ය වෙච්ච කෙනෙක් හෝ එහෙම කෙනෙක් මේ මැතිවරණයට ඉල්ලන්න ඡන්ද අපේක්ෂක දෙවිපත් වුණොත් ඒ වගේ වෙලාවක මොකද්ද කරන්නේ?
තියෙන්නේ ගරු අධිකරණයෙන් තමයි තීරණය.
Some matters have to be determined by the esteemed courts. I cannot say how a person, even a former prison inmate or anyone else, can receive nominations.
කෙනෙක් නාම යෝජනා දුන්නේ මං කොහොමද කියලා.
Anyone whose name is on the electoral list can vote.
ඒකේ වෙලාවටයි තීරණය කරන්නේ.
Any person whose name is on the electoral list can vote and contest an election too, but there is also the right to challenge this.
නමුත් ඒට අභියෝග කිරීමටත් අයිතිය තියෙනවා. මහින්ද දේශප්‍රිය ගිජ්ජිය බඳින්න එච්චර කැමති නෑ ඒක පාටයි. මොකද මම ඒ ගැන ක්‍රියා කරොත්
If I take any steps regarding this, people will say that I am taking steps because he spoke against me.
මම ඒ ගැන ක්‍රියා කරන්න පියවරක් ගන්නවා කියන. ඒකයි හේතුව. මට පඹයයි කියපු එකට මම මේක කරන්න ගියා කියලා තමයි කට්ටිය කියන්නේ.
That is the reason. It could be that I was called a scarecrow in order to anger me and incite a statement from me. I too was brought up close by. I am a man of the village, not a boy of the village.
මම ගමේ මිනිහෙක්. ගමේ කොල්ලෙක් නෙවෙයි. එක ඉස්කෝලේම තමයි ගියෙත්.
We went to the same school and we bathed at the same beach in the same village. Therefore, it is a little difficult to trap me. I will not get caught to this trap. If anyone lodges a complaint, I will make inquiries.
මම ඒක ගුලට අහුවෙන්නේ නැහැ. කවුරු හරි වෙයි නමුත් ආවොත් මම පරීක්ෂණයක් පැමිණිලා කවොත් ඒක කරනවා.
Journalists also raised questions on the discovery of a ballot paper marked for the JVP at a polling station in Madura post-election.
වෙන්නේ අපේ සමහර ඡන්දදායකයෝ ඡන්දේ දාලා
What happens is that at times voters go into the cubicle and leave the ballot paper elsewhere, or instead of putting it into the proper ballot box, they put it into one of the additional ballot boxes. There were instances in Colombo this time around where people tried to put ballot papers in the wrong box and officials intervened and directed them to the correct ballot box.
දැකලා ටක් ගාලා අරගෙන අරකට මාරු කරපු අවස්ථා තියෙනවා.
That is the question, but all 5 or 6 officials at the polling station are engaged in some task or the other. We always come across 1 or 2, and when we find them, we collect them and place them in the ballot boxes before voting concludes. We need to introduce an SPO and put a stop to this. Inquiries are underway.
The Supreme Court dismissed the appeal made by 4 police officers, including the OIC of the Angulana police station, convicted for the murder of 2 youth in Angulana, and reaffirmed the death sentence ordered by the High Court.
The appeal was taken up before a panel consisting of Justices Shivani Tilakawardena, Chandwa Ekanayaka, Satya Hettige, Prasad Deb and Eva Vanasundara. The defendants were handed the death sentence by the Colombo High Court upon conviction of charges which included the murder of 2 youth, Nimesh Taranga Fernando and Danushka Udayakanta Ponzo, on the 12th of August 2009, kidnap of the 2 individuals as well as conspiring to commit murder. The convicts include the former OIC of the Angulana police, a police sergeant, a constable and a civil security personnel.
Now, Sri Lanka's ambassador to Saudi Arabia, V. Krishnamurthy, says that a total of 31 Sri Lankans have died in Saudi Arabia in the year 2014. V. Krishnamurthy made this statement in response to the inquiries made by News First on an article published on Arab News. The Gulf-based news agency Arab News reported on its website yesterday that the remains of around 20 Sri Lankans are lying in mortuaries in Saudi Arabia and awaits repatriation. Arab News, quoting a spokesperson at the Sri Lanka Economic Association, states that an average of 1 death is reported every day outside Sri Lanka.
According to the records of this patient, in the year 2013, only 128 deaths occurred, and 2014, as of today, 32 cases have been reported. Thus, average of number of deaths is 10 to 11 death cases. Death cases are reported per month in the embassy. As again, the point that stated quoting the Sri Lankan embassy official. Accordingly, that news item is completely baseless.
News First on a number of occasions has reported on instances where the remains of Sri Lankans who passed away in Saudi Arabia were brought to the country several days later. This child bears testament to such an incident. In this footage, he is seen worshipping his mother after her remains were sent back home several days after the death was announced. The victim had died owing to severe burn injuries. The anguish continues. This mother, a resident of Kosgada, is also amongst the list of women who have died in Saudi Arabia. Following her death, a friend of the victim had notified the relatives that the victim died after being pushed off a 4-story building.
She went there because we were desperate. Medical reports had indicated that she had been assaulted and then pushed off a building. She had a fracture on her spinal cord and hand.
The death of Mohammed Nona Gomisha, a resident of Ambalantota, who was employed in Saudi Arabia, was reported 3 years after they lost trace of her. The body of Yogeshwaran Shanti, who was a resident of the Vakare area in Wala, Chennai, was sent to Sri Lanka after she allegedly committed suicide. However, her relatives suspected foul play due to the injuries on her body. Meanwhile, Tilak Aryaratna, a resident of Dambul whose wife died while employed in Saudi Arabia, said that his wife's body was brought to Sri Lanka 3 months after being informed of her death.
In a mysterious incident, a large number of fish in the Attanagalu Oya in Askariya have died. Our correspondent stated that this situation arose this morning.
Residents in Asgiria stated that they noticed a change in the color of the water early this morning. Later they observed the large number of fish that had perished. When a News First crew visited the area, we witnessed that fish big as 3 feet in length had died.
The water had turned black since early morning and the people here caught fish that were 3 or 4 feet long. The fish are still twitching around. The fish have been dying since morning and I don't think anyone around can stay here too because this water leads to the wells as well.
We caught 4 fish and put them back in the water and saved their lives.
We even met groups of people who took the fish home for consumption.
This has been happening at the Aniket near the temple. From this morning we have been capturing fish and transferring them to the temple and the lake. The authorities have not come here yet. We ask that the Sirasa Media Network report this matter.
Medical experts opine that it is unwise to consume fish when unaware of the cause of death.
Why are fish dying in this way? Is it because of poison? The cause has not been revealed as yet. Therefore, it is unwise to consume these fish. I ask that the people refrain from cooking and eating these fish.
Sudden death of fish in the Ratgama Lagoon in Gaul.
Cause:
change in the salinity levels of the waters of the lagoon. Mass death of fish in the Mundun Ala in Kiribatgoda.
Cause:
toxic substance introduced to the water. Mass death of fish in the canal that flows to the Bolgada Lake via the Attiria wetlands.
Cause:
toxic material from surrounding factories being dumped into the canal.
What effect will negligent waste disposal and the destruction of aquatic ecosystems have on the fish resource?
The Sri Lanka Army says that the demining process in the residential areas in the north has been completed. Army media spokesperson Brigadier Ruwan Vanigasuriya made this statement while addressing a media briefing in Colombo today.
The inaugural media briefing of the Media Centre of the Ministry of Defence and Urban Development was held today. This media centre has been established following the dissolution of the Media Centre for National Security. Out of 2,064 square kilometres that were mined, only 82 square kilometres are yet to be cleared. We can proudly say that we have partially completed demining activities in the land area required for displaced persons. Furthermore, we have almost completed demining farmlands so the public can engage in their daily activity. As per the total operation, nearly 1.1 million landmines and explosive materials have been recovered and destroyed so far. The military spokesperson also highlighted the issue of the violation of Sri Lanka's maritime boundary. Our maritime boundary is ours. No one has been given the legal power to violate our maritime boundary, and there is no need to give such power either. We don't plan on doing that. We will continue to arrest those who violate the boundary. Accordingly, the discussions on releasing these arrested persons will continue at international level. No license has been given to anyone to fish in our waters or to arrest anyone.
And continue with your news. The Youth Collective to Safeguard the United National Party convened a media briefing today.
It is evident that the party is deteriorating day by day because he continues to protect his position as leader. He introduces leadership councils that acts based on his whim and fancy. These are similar to various puppet committees. This game has been rejected through this recent election by the citizens of this country and the supporters of the UNP. This is evident through the election results. Everyone who supported Mangala Samaravira's Cinnamon Pole army has been defeated and sent home. Also, Nadisha Hemamali, who said that she will be joining the Cinnamon Pole army on the day of the nominations, has also been defeated. This is what should happen, and that is what we have maintained all this time.
Has this puppet leadership council brought victory? They have not been able to gain the votes or the seats that the government lost. Instead, Ranil Wickremesinghe and his autocratic leadership council has only managed to reduce the 30 seats that we won last time to 28.
Now a lecture titled From Far West to Near East, Need to Refocus Sri Lankan Foreign Policy was held in Colombo this morning. The lecture was delivered by Dr. Kalinga Senaviratna, the renowned journalist and lecturer.
The event took place this morning under the auspices of Senior Minister of Human Resources, D.E.W. Gunasekara.
If Sri Lanka plays its cards smartly in the coming years, it is here that we could play an important role in promoting Asian unity. Unfortunately, I feel, judging from the way Sri Lanka has conducted its foreign policy in the past decade or two, Sri Lanka has not fully grasped. Otherwise, rather than spending hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars on Western lobbyists, we should have invested that money in expanding our diplomacy and links in the Near East. The money we spent on children could have been better spent if we invested those financial resources in expanding our diplomatic and cultural links in the Asian region. After all, the Commonwealth is a relic of a dead past that glorifies the British Empire, and faster it dies, the better.
Sri Lanka is concerned, we also have to take these world realities into account. Our own national interest, then the common global issues like, say, climate change and various others, which needs collective effort. Then also other geopolitical interests, geo-economic interests of other states, and the global strategies. All these factors have to be taken into account in shaping the foreign policy.
Meanwhile, General Secretary of the Citizens Front and parliamentarian J. Sri Ranga says that it is imperative for SAARC countries to work together to achieve common goals. He made this comment during a workshop in Nepal recently.
The two-day regional consultation on engaging SAARC for resilience and cross-border facilities for rapid response in disasters was held in Nepal recently. The two-day workshop featured high-ranking disaster management officials from the South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation or SAARC countries.
I don't see any disasters giving any restrictions, any boundaries. Out of 7 billion population in the world, we have more than one-fourth in the South Asian. So we have the bigger population in the South Asia, but still we can't work together.
Addressing those present, parliamentarian Ranga stressed the importance of crossing borders to respond to disasters in the region.
Cross-border transport facilitation is happening, cross-border state facilitation is happening, but unfortunately the disaster, cross-border disaster management, disaster facilities, still we are discussing. Even multinational companies, they are crossing the borders and they are handling and breaking all the laws in the respective countries. But unfortunately, we are unable to cross the borders.
The Secretary to the Ministry of Disaster Management also attended the two-day dialogue.
Today marks Day 7 of Around the World in 40 Days, a 40-day world tour jointly organised by News First and Sri Lanka Youth. The Sri Lanka delegation is currently in the Philippines ahead of the World Youth Conference that will be held in Sri Lanka later this year.
Around the World in 40 Days.
The Sri Lankan delegates who will travel across 5 continents will exchange ideas with the youth in countries they visit. Early this morning, the team left Manila to Dasmariñas, 36 kilometers away. Subsequently, they were welcomed at the Philippines Technology, Education and Skills Development Authority. Thereafter, the team headed to the De La Salle University in Dasmariñas, where a cordial discussion was organized. There, the university students were interested in finding out about the World Youth Conference, which is due to be held in Sri Lanka.
The World Youth Conference is a very important event for young people all over the world because it's an opportune time to talk about how young people can engage in the discussion on post-2015, post-MDG, Millennium Development Goals discussion, especially since we want young people to be part of the discourse on changing the world and looking at how young people can look at priorities insofar as youth development is concerned.
I am here at the De La Salle University in Dasmariñas, which is located 36 kilometers away from Manila. Our team had the opportunity to participate in a discussion held here today. The students who inquired about Sri Lanka stated that they would like to be a part of the World Youth Conference that will be held in May. Meanwhile, parallel to the World Youth Conference that will be held from the 6th of May till the 9th of May, a cycling race dubbed Tour de Youth, organized by Sri Lanka Youth, commenced from the Duraiappah Stadium in Jaffna. The race will be conducted in 5 stages. Today, the cyclists concluded their race at the Tamil Central College in Vavuniya. The race will conclude at the Sri Lanka Youth Centre in Maharagama on the 6th of this month.
Now moving into some international news. Chile has declared 3 northern regions hit by a 8.2 magnitude earthquake to be a disaster areas. At least 6 people are known to have died and tens of thousands of people have been evacuated.
The quake struck at around 10:46 p.m. local time, about 86 kilometers northwest of the mining area of Iquique. Waves of up to 2.1 meters have hit some areas and there have been power cuts, fires and landslides. The government said the declaration of a disaster in the Arica, Parinacota and Tarapacha regions was aimed at avoiding instances of looting and disorder. President Michelle Bachelet said the country had faced the emergency well and called on those in affected regions to keep calm and follow instructions from the authorities.
El país sufrió un terremoto en el norte de 8,3 grados Richter.
The tsunami alert was given immediately, and we have seen an organized evacuation of the people who have collaborated since the first moment. Appropriate measures have been taken to protect their lives and their belongings, and the government will continue to work all the time that is necessary to confront this emergency and protect our citizens.
Cuyas identidades están siendo confirmadas.
Chilean TV broadcast pictures of traffic jams as people tried to leave the affected areas. Officials said the dead included people who were crushed by collapsing walls or died of heart attacks. At least 8 strong aftershocks followed in the few hours after the quake, including a 6.2 tremor. Partial landslides have also taken place between the towns of Putre and General Lagos. The Interior Minister also told Chilean TV that some 300 women inmates had escaped from a prison in Iquique. Officials later said that 26 of them had been recaptured. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center issued an initial warning for Chile, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia and Panama. However, all warnings, watchers and alerts were later lifted except for Chile and Peru. Tsunami watchers, in which the danger of tidal waves is deemed to be less serious, had been in place for Costa Rica, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Guatemala, Mexico and Honduras. Evacuations were also ordered in Peru, where waves of up to 2 meters high above normal forced about 200 people to leave the seaside town of Boa del Rio near the Chilean border. Chile is one of the most seismically active countries in the world. Central and southern areas of the country were hit by a powerful earthquake of 8.8 magnitude, followed by a tsunami that devastated scores of towns in February 2010. In 1960, an area of Chile south of Concepcion was hit by a 9.5 magnitude quake which caused about 1,655 deaths and a tsunami in Hawaii and Japan.
And now in another headline-making story, Malaysia's police chief said today that it is focusing its criminal investigation on the cabin crew and pilots of a missing Malaysian Airlines plane. Inspector General of Police, Royal Malaysian Police Force Khalid Abu Bakar said the passengers have been cleared of possible involvement in the activity that could have been connected to the flight's disappearance on March 8th.
10 planes and 9 ships are searching the southern Indian Ocean for any trace of the aircraft and the black box or flight data recorder, which will prove to be crucial in determining the course of events on board the plane. The black box stops sending out location signal or a ping about 30 days after a plane crashes. The search for MH370 is now in its 4th week. A UK submarine has also joined the hunt. Flight MH370 disappeared on the 8th of March as it was travelling from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. It was carrying 239 people. Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak was scheduled to arrive in Perth, Western Australia this evening. He will visit the new Joint Agency Coordinating Centre where the Southern Indian Ocean search is being led. He will meet Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott and retired Air Chief Marshal Angus Houston, who is leading the JACC.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka has decided to revise the maximum interest rates that could be offered for deposits accepted, maintained or renewed by licensed finance companies, effective from the 1st of April 2014.
A press release issued by the Department of Supervision of Non-Bank Financial Institutions of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka notes that the maximum interest rate that could be offered for savings deposits accepted or maintained by licensed finance companies shall be 7.58% per annum. The maximum interest rate for deposits accepted or renewed, i.e. fixed deposits, are as follows: 11.01% for a maturity period of 1 year or less, 12.01% for a maturity period of over 1 year and up to 3 years, and 13.51% for a maturity period of over 3 years. The CBSL notes that in the event that a savings or fixed deposit is made by a person who is over 55 years of age, a finance company may pay an additional interest rate of 1% above the specified maximum interest rates.
Now, wildlife officers succeeded in rescuing 3 wild elephants, including a calf that had fallen into 2 agrarian wells in the Kakirav area.
This wild elephant and calf had fallen into an agrarian well in the Kumbukwewa area in Kakirava. Area residents say that the adult and calf were from a herd that came to the area last night in search of food. Officers of the Gajamitra Wildlife Unit, the police and area residents engaged in a major operation to get the animals out of the well. The rescued wild elephant was chased away to a nearby reserve, while the calf is currently in the custody of wildlife officials. The calf is about a month old. Wildlife officers and area residents rescued another wild elephant that had fallen into an agrarian well in the Mahawewa area in Kakirava. The elephant was later chased away into a forest area. Area residents say the elephant, which is from the Kalawawa Reserve, frequently approaches human settlements. Meanwhile, Minister of Wildlife Resource Conservation Vijit Vijayamonizoisa says that investigations will be conducted immediately into an incident where a female elephant was shot and wounded near the Demodirawewa in Tanamalbila. Wildlife officers suspect that poachers may have shot the female with the intention of capturing her calf. The female is currently in critical condition.
The village folk say that there were several jeeps in the area. They said they were defenders. I asked the warden of the Udawalawa National Park to deploy 2 officers. The assistance of an NGO has been obtained to treat this elephant. She is very weak. Steps are being taken to treat her.
In sports news tonight, Sri Lanka's Udeshika Pabodini has jumped 5 places to take over as #1 ranked bowler for the first time ever in the latest ICC Women's Player Rankings for T20 bowlers, while Sri Lankan captain Shashikala Siriwardena has taken over as #1 ranked all-rounder.
The
The latest player rankings were released today at the end of the group stage of the ICC Women's World 2020-2014 in Sylhet. Thereby, Sri Lanka's left-arm medium pacer Udeshika Prabodhani tops the list among the bowlers. Prabodhani, who claimed 5 wickets at an average of 9.40 and at an economy rate of 3.35, now has a best ever 657 ratings points. Meanwhile, Sri Lankan captain Shashikala Siriwardena has taken over as the number 1 ranked all-rounder for the first time on the ICC Women's Player Rankings for T20 International All-Rounders with 305 ratings points. Shashikala has also moved up 4 places to 9th amongst the top 10 of the bowlers table.
Moscow Sheremetyevo Airport celebrated April Fool's Day in style yesterday, trying to engage as many passengers as possible in musical happenings across its departure terminals.
An orchestra of 11 musicians started entertaining passengers in early afternoon, playing world-renowned classical compositions that included Brahms, Vivaldi, Mozart and others.
Having gathered a big enough crowd of passers-by and admirers, orchestra players welcomed those who were interested in trying themselves as conductors to guide the orchestra for a few minutes.
Plenty of enthusiasts engaged in this activity, most of them having no previous conducting experience. We leave you tonight with this inspiring footage.
Take
care and good night.
Hotline 0114-896-896. www.newsfirst.lk. Feedback at newsfirst.lk.